Hi guys, welcome back to another Coffee with Chloe video. I have my Wawa coffee this morning. It's a salted caramel iced coffee. And today we are talking about things you can do to encourage a lifelong learning mindset in yourself and to kind of unrot your brain. So around this time last year, because of my mental health, I had to drop out of college. So I was out of school and I was really struggling, and I was spending, this is embarrassing to admit, but I was spending anywhere between 12 to 14 hours a day on my phone, usually scrolling on TikTok. At least 8 to 10 hours of that time was just scrolling mindlessly on TikTok. And I got to a point where I felt so I could feel my brain rotting and atrophying. Like, I felt like when I tried to sit down and write, I couldn't write. I couldn't focus on a book for more than a few minutes. I couldn't do some basic arithmetic. It was awful. And as somebody who used to be like one of the gifted A+ students and everything, I just felt like I'd reached a new level of gifted kid burnout, and I was so sick of it. I couldn't afford to get back into school at that time because of the situation I'd landed myself in due to my mental health. These are little things that I started doing, and I'm still like adding to this list to help unrot my brain and get my brain back where I want it to be. I am back in school now, so that itself is helping. But I know that's not what everybody wants, and it's not for everybody. So these are all options that don't include actually going to university. The first thing I did this year was I taught myself how to write in cursive. Now I pretty much exclusively write in cursive. It started out as like I was only letting myself write in this journal if I was writing in cursive, and now it's just in everything. I do my morning pages in cursive, my school notes, my stuff I write at work, everything's in cursive. When I started elementary school, they were still teaching it in like first grade, but I hated my teachers so much that I convinced my parents to homeschool me. And by the time I went back into public school, they'd stopped teaching cursive. So I just never learned how to write it. I knew how to read it because my mom writes in cursive and so does my baby sister, but I never tried to write it because it seemed pointless. And it was a really good small starting place for me to look up the alphabet, practice the words, and then just get going. So that was a fun thing, and it's so easy and accessible. Another thing that I've actually just discovered, this is from the last couple of weeks, is Open Learn courses at universities. They're completely free, and tons of universities have them. Right now I'm taking a museum exhibit curation course from Harvard. It's a 10-week long course, and it just talks about how to curate art exhibits and other museum exhibits. It's really interesting. I'm doing it as part of the Artist Way. And MIT has it, Yale, Stanford, there's so many. There's a whole Open Learn website that kind of categorizes or catalogs all of these different courses. I definitely recommend checking it out. You can find courses on writing, art, computer programming, writing code, history, theology, anything under the sun. So if you're looking, if you think it'd be fun to take one little class that you don't have to pay for, I would definitely recommend Open Learn. Another thing I've done is I've tried to expand the type of writing that I do, because I used to write so much and then I stopped for a couple of years and it was really hard to get back into it. And I did end up writing a novel, but since I finished that novel, I've been having a hard time writing creatively. So I decided to try and push the boundaries of my writing. And one thing that did help me with this was going back to school, because I took a composition class this summer. And it reintroduced me to academic writing and research papers, which I had so much fun. I also got to try writing some narrative essays, which really, I don't know, I had never tried to write a narrative essay before for funsies, and now I write at least one a week and I put them up on my Substack. I've also been writing poetry, I've been writing personal columns, really challenging myself to try and get my message or my emotions across in fewer words or to use more elevated vocabulary. And it's been really fun. It's really changed the way that I think about creating and about writing. Along similar lines, I have been reading outside of my usual genres. I used to be the biggest reader, but for a few years, I was just having such a hard time focusing, and I was so deep in my mental funk and with school that I wasn't reading, and it was so bad. So when I got back into reading, I primarily focused on books with lighter tones. So by this I mean like romance books, and I looked for happier romance books. I was like, I don't want to cry, I don't want to push myself further into any sort of depression. So that's really what I focused on, And for about a year, that's pretty much exclusively what I read, except for a couple of fantasy recommendations from my little sister, who is the biggest reader I know. This year, I've really challenged myself to kind of get outside of that box, and I've explored different authors, I've explored different genres. We've been doing a lot of literary fiction. I'm really enjoying them. They are a bit more complex or sadder, or more sad, not sadder. They're a bit more upsetting at times, but it's really interesting to read and examine, especially if I'm reading a book that somebody I know has read or is reading. I have a friend, Gladys, and she and I have our little 2-person book club. So recently we've read Remarkably Bright Creatures, and we just finished Normal People by Sally Rooney, which I had read by myself earlier this year. And getting to discuss it with people is so amazing. I've really tried to reach outside of the bounds of my normal reading. Right now, since it's October, I felt like it was appropriate to reach more into like thriller and dark academia and horror. So that's what we're exploring currently. But prior to this, it was nonfiction, essay books, poetry books, literary fiction, etc. Similar to exploring different writing styles or writing types, I've been trying different types of art. This is something I'm exploring more recently, so I've only done a few. I went to the beach the other day and I just drew with markers, and it was super fun, and then I added some stickers. I want to go get oil pastels because I remember using those in school and I loved it. And I also need to get some more acrylic and watercolor paint. I found that painting or drawing and stuff like that, it helps me connect more with the world and pay more attention to smaller details. And from there, I think of topics to research or things I want to read about or things I want to write about, and inspires pieces. And it just really keeps my brain engaged with the here and the now, which is something I've struggled with a lot the last couple of years. When I'm reading, I also try and make vocabulary lists. So last week, I went and bought myself a dictionary and thesaurus to use while I'm writing. But I've also been using it while I'm reading because I don't know why, but the act of picking up my phone to Google a word while I'm reading really bothers me, but the act of picking this thing up to look a word up while I'm reading doesn't. So I've been making vocabulary lists in my little journal as I read. So the list I've completed recently, I had one for The Secret History. Now I have one going for The Great Divide by Christina Henriquez. And I feel like I'm learning so many new words. So I've been making the lists, then I define them. I try and find synonyms, and I practice using them in written sentences. I try to slip them into conversation, etc. So I'm actually learning and expanding. I want to get the Merriam-Webster vocab builder book, but I have not yet. So it's on the wish list. Finally, obviously picking up new hobbies and expanding old ones. I put this one last just because I feel like it's kind of common sense, but maybe these are all kind of common sense. For me, what this looks like, when I say expanding old hobbies, I like to bake and I kind of like cooking, but usually I stick to the same like 4 recipes and I do nothing else. I've been really trying to challenge myself to step outside of the box and try new things. So I made cake pops, I made cupcakes recently. Those were more in the safe zone. It was the day before yesterday. I made snickerdoodles, which I hadn't made in years, and they came out so good. I was so happy. So next, I think I'm gonna kind of jump really ahead and try to make these little pumpkin cream cheese filled muffins, and we'll see how that goes. With cooking, my aunt chooses a menu for us every week, and I cook 1 or 2 of the meals, and it's always something I've never made before. So I get to really try and explore, because for me, cooking is a lot more stressful than baking. I feel like there's a lot more going on at once, and I have a hard time like not getting overwhelmed. So it's a good little challenge for me to remember to chill out and that everything's gonna be okay, and how to multitask. And then some new hobbies that I want to pick up but I haven't yet. I really do want to try like knitting or crocheting. I've done them a little bit in the past, but it's never stuck, and I would love to do a little bit more. My sister loves to crochet. Anyways, all of that to say, I would love to do a little bit more of that, especially because I read a book last year called When Women Were Dragons, and there was connections between knitting and crocheting and physics and math, and then I was reading a little bit about that the other day, and I thought that was fascinating. So I would love to do a little bit more of that as I'm researching the topic, because I feel like it would be really engaging. So yeah, those are my personal tips for those are the things that I'm doing every single day to try and stimulate my brain and encourage lifelong learning. Like I said, I am also in school. I've just gotten back in the summer, and of course that's helping, but there's so many things that you can do outside of traditional education because knowledge is not limited to what you can learn in a classroom. Yeah, classrooms are cool, but there's so much to learn just from experiencing the world and trying to be more present with things that you're reading, things that you're seeing, etc. So if you have anything to share, please put it in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching.